In case you haven't heard the news, Spotify just rolled out a brand new feature on their platform, which as far as I can tell, functions very similarly to likes on social media. Because at least according to Spotify, they say we want to give creators a deeper understanding of how their content resonates with their audience. But you know what? I think it's a load of crock. And that's exactly why in this episode, I am breaking down what you need to know about this new metric, why this metric is not going to give you any insight whatsoever into the true health of your podcast, and most importantly, what you should focus on instead if you want a truer understanding of how your content is resonating with your listeners. Welcome to Insider Secrets to a Top 100 podcast. I'm your host, Courtney Elmer. Let's make your business binge-worthy. Now, I don't know if you subscribe to Pod News, but Pod News is a daily email that goes out that's a briefing on all things happening in the podcasting industry. And it's usually filled with headlines like Pod X Group acquires Lemonada Media, or SiriusXM's financials showed revenue for Pandora, where their podcasts live, was down 2%. So for someone like me, it's a great way to keep a pulse on what's happening in the industry. But the majority of content that's shared there is not for the everyday podcaster who's looking to grow their podcast. Because, let's be honest, who really cares about SiriusXM's financials? I don't know, maybe you do. But usually, I don't talk about these kind of industry details here on the show because, at the end of the day, how is that actually going to help you grow your show? You know what I'm saying? However, a recent newsletter that did hit my inbox caught my eye because it was relevant for you. And it was about Spotify's addition of this new metric that they're calling plays, not to be confused with downloads, streams, listens, or anything else that people just kind of lump together and say, yes, someone engaged with your podcast. Now, according to Spotify, Spotify's new plays feature is publicly visible, meaning that listeners are going to be able to now see play counts for podcast episodes directly within the Spotify app. And based on what Spotify has put out there as far as press releases go, this kind of transparency, and I quote, aims to help users of the Spotify platform discover popular content more easily. Now, on the flip side of that, for creators, that's you and me, Plays is supposedly supposed to offer insights into audience engagement. So the TLDR, play counts are now a thing. They're visible on the homepage, episode pages, and show pages inside of Spotify to the public. And on the back end of that, you're also going to be able to see plays on specific episodes in your Spotify for Creators dashboard. Now, according to what I have learned thus far about this metric, if an episode has fewer than 1,000 plays, it's going to display as less than, that little caret sign, like arrow pointing to the left, less than 1K. New episodes are going to show a new label for the first 24 hours instead of a play count. Okay, that's what we know so far. But I'm going to be completely honest with you. This is a absolutely terrible idea. I really want to know who on their app development team was sitting around the table at that team meeting being like, this will be a great idea. Let's turn Spotify into social media, essentially, by showing people how many plays someone got on an episode. Now, I am all for transparency in the industry. There is a lot of gray area in the industry from app to app. And, it's very confusing. It can, and without getting into the weeds here, it can be very confusing to know, well, what's the difference between a download and a play and a stream and a view and did someone really engage with my podcast? How long are they listening? I don't even know. It can get very confusing very quickly. But the addition of this metric is not actually going to help you understand the health of your podcast. And first of all, from a purely vanity perspective, how do you think that's going to make all of the independent and niche podcasters feel? I'm not talking about the Mel Robbins or the Joe Rogans here, where suddenly Spotify is displaying the play counts of your episodes for the general public. Well, first things first, it's going to become the breeding ground for all the mental health problems that we're going to be unloading on our therapist 10 years from now. And I started this podcast and I worked so hard and I got 17 plays and it sucked because everyone else saw that number and it made it seem like I had no clue what I was talking about as the expert on my podcast, even though I have 20 years of experience. Come on here, okay, stepping off my soapbox. But really think about it. This is the breeding ground for comparison because what it's essentially doing by making plays visible is essentially kind of turning podcasting, at least on Spotify, into or very similar to social media, where that is then going to be the visible metric that people fixate on. And the visible metrics, like this plays thing or downloads, are often the worst metrics for measuring the health of your podcast because they don't paint the full picture. And in a moment, I'll share why. But in addition to that, suddenly, every podcaster out there, independent podcaster, niche podcaster, just like you, just like me, is now going to be focused on how many plays did I get on that episode. No different than, okay, I put all this time into creating a piece of short form content. How many likes did it get? And you're refreshing to see how many people engage with that. Whereas on the back end, you might have really high engagement on that post. But the general public can't see that because you got 4 likes on it, 2 spam comments, and nobody in the DM saying, hey, I want to work with you. the temptation to focus on this visible play count is ultimately going to distract many podcasters from doing the craft, from getting better at podcasting. And it's going to create a lot of unnecessary mental chatter about how good or how not good that they're doing. And it's going to leave a lot of people resorting to chasing vanity stats, which is going to lead to burning out, which is going to lead to them hating podcasting, which is going to lead to them giving up altogether. And I cannot see how that is a good thing for the industry. This industry already has incredibly high churn as it is. Now, the other reason that this metric is total garbage is because it's only going to display the plays that you got on Spotify. Let me tell you something. We get thousands of listens a month here on the show. I can send you the screenshots. Spotify makes up about 15% or less of our listener base. The majority is on Apple, web plays elsewhere. So yeah, you might look at my plays on Spotify and immediately make these sweeping assumptions about, oh my gosh, here Courtney is talking about helping people get in the top 100 with her podcast, but she only has 24 plays on this episode. Like, what could she possibly know? And what makes me mad about that is that you listening to my show, you wouldn't care as much because you know the value that you get here when you listen. But to a new listener, that social proof is going to wreck the first impressions of a lot of podcasts. And it's just so unhealthy in so many ways. Okay, I could keep going. I probably need to end the rant here. Let's pivot to what can you do about it? Because none of us is going to be able to show up at Spotify's headquarters and knock on the door and say, hey, this is a super sucky idea. I don't know who on your team came up with this. And without revealing too much industry knowledge that I'm probably not supposed to know, in so many words, Spotify has been hurting. They are doing a lot to be on the forefront and to be on the cutting edge. But listen up because you heard it here first. Bide your time. Be patient. Watch. Wait. Keep doing your thing and see how this all plays out. Please take this into your heart and soul right now. This plays metric is not a metric for you to worry about. Yes, I get that on the surface, it's like, oh my gosh, it's going to make my podcast look small. And it's going to maybe make you feel smaller because if you're already struggling to grow a show and now Spotify's kind of making that visible for the whole world to see, it's going to be like, well, really? Like, how is that going to help me? And it does hurt when you pour hours into, let's say, an Instagram post and you get a few likes on it. Same thing. You pour hours into a podcast episode and now it's going to be like, well, I got less than 1,000 plays on that episode because not all of my listener base is on Spotify. But for the people on Spotify who are not Mel Robbins and who are not Joe Rogan, it's going to look like this is not a popular podcast. So I'm so against the idea of turning podcasting into a popularity contest. Part of the reason that podcasting has been and is what it is because the playing field is level. The playing field is even. And so with this new metric rolling out, it's going to be really easy to assume that, well, heck, if my downloads are in the low hundreds, and now Spotify is making this even worse by displaying to the world that my downloads are in the low hundreds, and that most people won't know that that's only a small percent of my listenership, because that number is going to look even tinier, but I'm going to be the only one who knows that. It's going to be a mental head game for you. Okay, so what I want you to focus on instead, number one, focus on mastering your craft. I created this episode, literally my raw stream of thoughts, the same day that that email went out, which has been a few weeks ago now by the time that you hear this. I have not talked to anyone else about this. I have not read a bunch of opinion pieces and then formed my own. I'm just calling it like I see it. And I will continue to do so because ultimately I know that you listen to this show because some part of you appreciates my honest opinion and not a regurgitated one. So focus on your craft. Focus on getting better at being a podcast host. Number two, learn the metrics that actually do determine the health of your show. And get good at reading the kind of content your listeners want from you by learning how to read your metrics. There are 5 metrics that determine the true health of your show. In the next episode, I'm going to tell you exactly what they are. But for now, I want you to vow, I'm serious, make a vow with me, pinky promise right now, to let go of the vanity metrics for your show. Downloads, plays, these metrics are so misleading for so many reasons, but the main one being that these are not unique listener counts. Rather, this is a total estimate of the number of plays you might have gotten from a specific app. And in many cases, when you hover over like the little information thing in the back end of your Spotify for Creators dashboard or Apple or wherever, they're telling you it's for someone who played 0 seconds or more of an episode. Wait a minute, what? Like, so did they actually listen, right? Like, so these numbers are they're so misleading. This is not an indicator of the number of people who listen to your podcast. True podcast health is determined by how many new listeners that you are getting every day and by how many returning listeners do you have. That is it. And there are ways to figure out those numbers. If your new listener count is going up, then your marketing efforts are paying off, and that is moving in the direction that you want. That is indicative of growth. On the flip side of that, if your listener retention is strong And you can see through your numbers, because you know what to look at, that you are keeping listeners around. And I'm not just talking listener consumption here. I'm talking about keeping listeners listening from episode to episode to episode, week after week after week. Then the base that you are building with your audience, if that is showing upward trends and that's on an upward trajectory, you're doing just fine. That's all you need to know. There are no apples to apples comparisons in the podcasting space. And this is also why it makes me so mad that we look up to these big podcasters who we aspire to be like, when in reality, you might have a super niche show. I have a niche show, which means that I'm not the Mel Robbins of the world. I'm not going to appeal to a broad, wide swath of people. It's just never going to be. So my show is never going to be that big because it is niche, and that's okay. So when you can learn and when you can rest in the fact that all you have to focus on is literally just to compare your metrics this month to the metrics of your show last month, and if those numbers are growing and you know what 5 metrics to look at, then you can rest in the fact that everything you're doing on the show is working and that it's paying off. So I don't want you to get caught up in this. I don't want you to get caught up in the hype here. I don't want you to believe for a second that Spotify has your best interest at heart. They have their bank account at heart. We all know it. So don't succumb to the pressures from these platforms or believe that they're really trying to help you gain a deeper understanding of how your content resonates with your audience. That is like literally the dumbest thing I've ever heard. The way that you know if your content is resonating with your audience is through your average listener retention time, through the specific kind of feedback that you're getting from your listeners, and from the overall popularity of your episode topics, which you can figure out with a few different, less visible, but still accessible metrics in your podcast dashboard. So I'm going to link to an episode in the show notes where I break down the kind of feedback that you want to be getting on your podcast to know if your content is actually resonating. And in the next episode, I'm going to walk you through these 5 metrics that determine the true health of a podcast so that you can silence that voice in your head that says you're not good enough, you're never going to make it in podcasting, and actually look at what the true numbers for your show are telling you. Chances are you are going to be so pleasantly surprised. I promise you that. You know that I stand for the independent podcaster. That's you, and I've got your back. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I will see you in the next episode to help you make your business binge-worthy.